Okay, welcome back everyone from the refreshment break. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our sponsor for that refreshment break, IACI Consulting Actuaries. Welcome to the final and closing session of the ASA convention this year. Very quick introductions. I am Nash and I'm joined by Gugu. If you guys don't know who we are by now, where have you been? And some of you may know that would be a fatal flaw, as we like to call it. I think, guys, it's been a very exciting 2 days that we've had you. Lots of great content over that. And the closing is going to be as exciting. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy the final and the closing session of this convention for today. I'm now going to hand over to my co-chair, Gugu, to do the introduction for our speaker.
Thank you, Nash. So it is very rare to attend an event that doesn't dip. In radio, we speak about light and shade, bits that are high points, other bits that aren't. And conventions are a difficult beast to make interesting. But this convention has managed to be exciting from the very first presentation we saw yesterday morning to our next guest. And so a very well done to the whole ASA convention team, the organizing team, for putting together what has been an exceptional convention. And it ends on a very high note because closing us off for this year's convention for 2025 is a highly respected individual. I think he's one of our greatest patriots, a man that is deeply committed to what this country is and the immense potential that this country could be. The man we're introducing this afternoon is Professor Bonang Mohale. He is Chancellor of the University of Free State. He's been chairperson of several major organizations, including Buisness Group and Accelerometer South Africa. He's also a professor of practice at the Johannesburg School of Business. Of course, you may remember him from his very impactful time at Business Leadership South Africa, where he provided great insight on the country's developments, our stories of the day, and some of the challenges the country has navigated over the last couple of years. He's spoken mainly on ethical leadership. And just this morning, I was reading a piece that was published in the Sowetan by someone that caught part of the professor's presentation at an AA function. And they described him as saying, legacy fades unless we keep imagining and reimagining, building, rebuilding, and adapting. Listening to Professor Bonang Mohale, I was reminded of a simple yet profound truth. The duty of every leader is to inspire confidence in the future. And so we are immensely lucky this afternoon that we get to hear from this great leader and patriot. Please join me in welcoming Professor Bonang Mohale, who will be speaking on the role of business.
So if this is your land, where are your stories? And what are your whispers? It is the title of his very first book. Professor J. Edwards Chamberlain is a professor emeritus of English and comparative literature at the University of Toronto. Of course, he was talking about finding the middle ground. But you see, if you and I don't tell our stories, it is possible that somebody might tell them in a manner that we may not like. Because if we don't think for ourselves, we place our future in the hands of others at a time that it is our job to create our own new world. Put differently, history is always written by the temporary occupants of the corridors of power. History is always written by the victors, never by the vanquished. My grandmother reminds me that until and unless lions have their own storytellers, stories about hunting will always glorify the hunter. So when your children ask you, what have you done with this amazing gift of being a part of God's own country, blue skies, African sunshine? what will you say your contribution was? Surely, it can't be that when they talk about our continent, Africa, they're always thinking about internecine strife, about wars, about coup d'etats, about feminine droughts. We are much more than that. I mean, this is a continent of 1.5 billion people, 55 countries. I include Western Sahara, with a continental GDP of 4.63 billion US dollars. We speak 3,000 languages. 60% of this population is below 25 years. And yet, every mineral that the world needs is found in this continent, not as number 17 or 19, but as number 1 or number 2. So how do you explain the fact that the Democratic Republic of the Congo has 80% of the world cobalt? This is the stuff they need to manufacture electric vehicles and the batteries that power them, and yet it is the poorest country in the Southern Hemisphere. Second only to Haiti in the Northern Hemisphere. When you let other people tell your story, I used to read geography, even though I did sciences at school, and history. If you're like me, you'll remember that they used to say that Africa is the second biggest continent after Asia. But have you looked at the map of the world or the map of the globe? It doesn't look like that. And it's not an accident. It's by desire. Because whilst you and I are struggling to speak up, palette, highlight, and celebrate this continent, some people are spending 10 times the money to make sure that we minimize this continent. It looks small, not by accident, by design. South Africa, the same thing. I think we started very well. We are a teenager in world terms because we compare ourselves with countries that are centuries old, especially in Europe. We're 31 years into a democracy. I'm hoping that as a direct result of our engagement, interaction, and interface this afternoon, we are going to help to puncture the inflated fallacies that we also are going to be another failed African country. Because you see, we haven't learned, even from other African countries. Ghana's Kwame Nkrumah, 57. And two of his first speeches. The first one talks about Cape to Cairo, Malakazia to Morocco. The second one, he says, Ghana will never be free until the whole of Africa is free. But he was killed by the CIA with the complicity of some of the people in his own cabinet. So maybe we should have learned 3 things from the rest of the continent. That number 1, these Uhuru presidents that stay in power for 40, 50 years are not good for Africans. Secondly, that even the good guys left on their own for far too long eventually become the bad guys. The third is that we need a viable opposition just to keep the good guys in check. Because even here in South Africa, I'm male, in case you haven't realized, I think. I'm also black, in case you haven't realized. So black people in this country are poor. Not because they're lazy, because the system makes it impossible for them to succeed. I'll come back to that. Let me put it differently. You see, if wealth is the inevitable outcome of both hard work and enterprise, then every woman in Africa should be a dollar billionaire. So 1910, when the Great Britain at that time were looking around who they're going to hand over this southernmost tip to, they were thinking of 3 conditions, and they ended on handing it over to white male Afrikaners, because they were convinced that they're the ones who are going to keep these 3 conditions. Number 1 was South Africa must continue to be a crucible of cheap labor forever. Number 2, that these blacks must risk it all and go to the belly of the earth and mine the gold. At one instance, we're the world's number 1 gold producer. We employed 1 million people. By 2010, that number had come down to 800,000. As we speak, it's less than 400,000. We're not even in the top 10 gold producing countries in the world. That they will have the first right of refusal to this gold. But the one that really energizes me is the fact that they can play around and find a diamond or 2 like they do in Botswana, because diamond mining is surface mining. And if they find these diamonds, we will determine the price. Hence the creation of the London Sales Organization. Up until today, you find the diamond, you take it to them. They look at, we think we'll pay you $3. So what I want you and I to probably turn on its head is the fact that, of course, we're blessed with Rolihlahla Nelson Mandela, 27th of April, 1994. We then became the 28th and the 29th, inherited a technically bankrupt country. In 5 years, quadrupled the GDP of this country. And we're called the Rainbow Nation. Handed over seamlessly to Thabo Mvuyelwa Mbeki, who gave us 43 consecutive quarters of positive GDP growth. The highest was in October 2007, when we reached 5.6% GDP growth. Since then, we've never done that. For the last 15 years, we've never grown by more than 2%. For the last 10 years, it's been pedestrian at less than 2%. And yet population growth has been 1.5, which means we're going backwards. If I had time, I'd put it differently and say, we are just regained our spot as the number 1 biggest economy in the continent, but at 400 billion US dollars. It was the same in 2016. So in real terms, your money in your back pocket buys you less today compared to the same period, 2016. And then 2007, we went to Mankweng. We call it Polokwane. And in 2009, when we look at the graph, it became a precipitous drop. Now we hold the world record for all the wrong reasons. We are the world's most unequal society, with a Gini coefficient of 0.63. We took over from Brazil in 2010. But even then, we measure only income inequality, not wealth inequality, not asset inequality. Because if we added 3 of those, I swear to God, there'll be a revolution in this country. I said I'll come back to that issue that these blacks are poor not because they are lazy. You know, we build our own towns now, 30 years of unfettered, absolute majority of this ANC-led government. And we built one called Cosmo City. And we're not solving the apartheid special planning. We put it 40 kilometers away from where the people of Cosmo City work. But in apartheid, it wasn't an accident. It was designed that way. Which then means for these blacks, they spend at least 40 minutes going one way and then 40 minutes coming back. Which means on average, it gobbles up 40% of their monthly wages. When you add food, 70% is gone. So structurally, very few black people can save. They live from hand to mouth. I know friends of mine who wake up every morning and get dressed up and aftershave and go to work. All their money ends on transport. And I say, but you're working for transport. He said, it's better than sitting at home because if I did, I'll have mental health issues. The second is that we've got the highest unemployment rate in the world. It's so bad, we even want to hide it. We've got two measurements. Like we did in apartheid, we had the commercial rent and the financial rent. So we use the narrow definition, which nobody uses, not the ILO definition. In the narrow definition, we exclude people that have given up looking for work in the last 36 months. With 750 days of national lockdown, who would have looked for a job? Those people are still unemployed at 33.6%. It's 43% unemployment. Even at 33%, it's worse than countries at war. Worse than what happened in Tunisia, self-immolation, that then gave us the Arab Spring. But the 2 weeks in July of 2021, that's where the numbers are absolutely amazing. Because at that time we had a 74.9% youth unemployment. That's 8 out of 10 young people sitting at home twiddling their thumbs with nothing to do. Not only are we asking for trouble, but we're actively looking for it. But when you say, no, 74% of young people are unemployed, it sounds like a number, right? That's 10 million young people who are not in employment, education, and training. There's 65 million South Africans. 52.5% of them are female. They don't look like me. 6 million young people don't know their father. But we're also the country with the highest SME failure rate as an acronym for small, medium enterprises. You see, I left micro out because that's survivalist. So we chose to be members of BRICS, 5 original countries. Now BRICS Plus, there's 11. Of all the other BRICS countries, new jobs created by SMEs, it's north of 60 percentage points. In this country, it's south of 15 percentage points. It takes you 2 hours to open a new business in Singapore. It takes you 3 years to open the same business in this country at a cost of 350,000. In Singapore, they've taken 350,000. They've bought goods that they then sell and they start trading. We're the country with the highest GBVF rate in the world. Not by a factor of 2, but 5 times the global average. I'm told it's a dialogue, that the value, the utility is in the questions they ask, and you and I attempt to answer them. If they ask the difficult ones, we give them to Shanae. Right? Let me end with an anecdote. Can I do that? So it was at the time that we thought it wasn't going to happen that David Whitley ascended the stage that looks pretty much like this. And he reminded us that it was the rule of law that the slaves could not play the white keys of the piano. He went on to render the John Newton classic, The Amazing Grace, composed with only 5 black keys. Because all the Negro spirituals have been composed using only the black keys. You and I have much more than just 5 black keys. We've got systems and processes. Even a government that looks like us. You see pain inflicted by your own, on your own, stings more. So Chinua Achebe is a poet and an author. He gave us that famous book, Turning Around the Gaia, the center can hold things fall apart. Second book. He opens that he's a fool, he who treats his own brother worse than a stranger. He goes on to say, when 2 brothers fight to the death, a stranger inherits your father's estate. He says, anger with your own brother must only be skin deep, never bone deep, that a brother that has made a mistake needs to be saved, not blamed. Even Zapu's Joshua Nkomo says something that came very late in my life, is that it is possible for a country to obtain its political liberation without its people being free. At the end of last week, We have another of the many commissions of inquiry into the death of the ANC's very first president to be a Nobel Peace Prize laureate, Chief Albert Luthuli. And they tell us, no, they've been lying to us all along that he was hit by a train. They murdered him and then they put him on the train track. But that's not why I'm telling you the story. I'm telling you the story because he said, you don't want that even your most fiercest enemies at their weakest to exclude you as a solution. So if this is your land, where are your stories?
Thank you very much, Professor. We have the rare opportunity of asking Professor Mohale some questions, either based on his address or some of his previous work in leadership, in business. This is a rare opportunity to engage with one of our leading thought leaders. So if you'd like to ask a question, please just raise your hand, and we will usher you to the mics are in the middle of each row. So we'll just ask you to make your way to the mic. But just to start, Professor, I'd like to ask a question about, you mentioned that it's been, well, financially we're in a better position. We were in a better position 15 years ago than we are now. Many of us are very aware of the challenges. G20 is coming. The president is right about the state of the city of Joburg where we are. And so there are many challenges, but there are people who remain optimistic. Would you say you are optimistic about where we are and where we could go?
I think by nature, I'm an eternal optimist. But my grandmother says, facts you can't deny, but truth you can apply. The truth is, we have squandered our most amazing opportunities. So think for a moment, if you look at 27th of April, we inherit this country. It's somewhere here. 5 years, we quadrupled the GDP. It looks that way. We hand over to President Thabo Mbeki. It goes that way. Look at the indices and the facts. So debt to GDP ratio during Mandela's period was about 20%. I'm rounding off the figures. Thabo Mbeki increased it to 22%. Then we were gifted with Sir Jacob Zuma. A gift. He increased that. He used to say, let's spend this much money on something. And they would say, people at National Treasury, but there's no money. I said, no, let's spend it now. Next year, they'll pay us more taxes. To him, a government was like a gift that keeps on giving. You finish the money this year, next year taxes, and forever. So now where we are, with the 6th and 7th administration, debt to GDP ratio is 77%. It's going to 80%. But I'm telling you the story because the countries that have defaulted on their debt, all of them, were spending more than 20% of their revenue on servicing debt, on interest. 20% or more, is asking for trouble. So at 77%, as South Africans today in this country, when so many of us dare to hope that joy and peace will prevail, 70% of 1.4 trillion that poor Edward Kieswetter collects every year for the last 15 years, the last 3 years, he banked 2 trillion rands a year every year. 70% of it goes only to 3 things. Number 1, to public sector wage bill. Number 2, social security. 3, debt to service this debt, this interest. 70%, that's why we have no money to put in infrastructure. So let me end answering your question by saying, so if you look at that trajectory, you are actuaries, you do this better than me. You look at me, you can almost figure out what I had for lunch. And therefore, work out my lifespan and how much it will cost me for insurance. About that, you do that with your eyes closed. So if you extrapolate 2007, in October when we were 5.6%, unemployment will be 16%. Interest rate today will probably be 4%. GDP growth will be 7%, because if it was 7% every 5 years, we double the size of this economy. But what do we actually have in real terms? I want to say I'm an optimist. I never thought in my life that there will come a time when people who sit at the apex of the food chain, we call them doctors. So when I was young, I did MBBCH at Wits. Doctors, and doctors, for me, when I grew up, these are the people who had license to print money. Because they just stand and we come to them. Huh? And they don't even ask us to pay. We volunteer. 800 of them in one province of Gauteng alone are unemployed. The Gauteng government says, not because we don't need them, they've got vacancies, but we have no money to pay them. Because you see, if you steal money, eventually it gets finished. If Gauteng was an African country, Gauteng, it would be the 7th in Africa, bigger than the economy of Kenya and Tanzania. But the people who call themselves our leaders don't even know this. They play with it like it's monopoly, snakes and ladders. In 7 years, they've had 6 mayors. So we are poor by choice of the leadership that we make. Take a few more. I was trying to intimidate them by taking off my jacket. Say, who dare ask a difficult question?
Questions, comments, questions that are more comments, because I love that from people. My question is more of a comment. I'll be brief.
Yes.
And they proceed not to be brief. But you don't have to be brief, so.
Yeah, I see some nice hands, but I like that one of a young lady.
Okay. Yeah. Ma'am with the striped dress.
You see, I chose the lady before the white man. Because he stood first. That's how we lost the land. That's how we lost the land.
You are massaging the numbers.
So be kind, my sister. You see, I chose you first. I loved you first.
Thank you. That was so touching. Thank you for that. I think it was a huge, refreshing thing. You know, our conversations here tend to be quite sanitized, and you brought a certain realness that was humanizing in a way, because these are, even though we are in a profession like this, by virtue of being here, even us as the Black people, we are far removed from our communities, right? So, you know, hearing you was really eye-opening. The most interesting thing that you said was about young people being unemployed and just sitting at home. And you know, that worries me. I even went to the extent of starting an organization to try and get young people to get out of whatever it is that they're going through, right? To start the businesses, to see a better life for them. Like if you go to Soweto and see what young people are doing there Monday to Friday, it's really quite saddening. And, you know, as a country, everything is working against us. I mean, even you're a bit pessimistic. And we really need, like, these young people to start participating in the economy. So I want to know from you, like, what sort of strategies? I mean, even for us here, I mean, we see how insurance companies are not growing by much. So we actually need more participation from young people for even from a capitalist point of view, for our country, our companies to grow. So we need to all be invested in this. And my question to you is, what are the strategies that we can employ to get them to economically participate and just wake up, you know, to the realities of the country and to themselves as well? Thanks.
Thank you, my dear sister. First, you surprised me and say, you are Black. What do you mean you're Black? I didn't even see you. What strategies? So let me start with the end in mind. 2026 is local government elections, and 2029 it's national government elections. So what type of leader might stand the best chance of taking us out of this hellhole? So number one, imagine if all of us woke up and realized that actually the power sits with us, not with the politicians. That even if they can mess us up, it can't be forever because we vote every 5 years. So you vote 5 years, they piss you off. Next 5 years, just don't vote them back in. Because otherwise then it means you are a sucker for pain. So I think we should be voting for the type of leaders that, number one, would help us to root out and defeat state capture. Because it doesn't matter what we do. First 5 years of state capture, we stole 1.5 trillion South African rands. That's 2/3 of what one of the top 5 revenue collection agencies in the world collects a year every year. 2, we need the type of leadership that will help us to complete the unfinished project of transformation, even if it's less fashionable to talk about it these days. Because you see, this economy must be broadly reflective of the demographics. If it's not, these blacks must also have something to lose. If they have nothing to lose, they'll continue to ban the only clinic that serves the 2 towns, the only fire truck that serves the 2 towns. Three, we need ethical leadership. Because ethics is what you do when nobody's watching. Fourth, we need good governance because it's defined, it's prescribed and proscribed in the Companies Act, now King 5. Because the definition of cooperative governance is separation of ownership from control. But it's because leaders who practice good governance don't steal from the mouths of the babies, the sick and the dying, like we saw them looting during COVID-19. The penultimate one, we need service delivery. I mean, it's what is contained in Section 194 of our Constitution. And then lastly, of course, we need law and order, safety and security, because South Africans are not safe walking on the streets. I can almost understand because they are exposed. But they are unsafe in their own homes, which is supposed to be their fortress and sanctuaries, because it's the contact crimes that are increasing. So that's the type of leadership we need. There's a second bucket that says, business, it's not our second chance, it's our last hope. But for business to do that, they need to stop dancing with the devil. Because my grandmother says, if you dance with the devil doesn't change. Businesses were complicit in the biggest heist this country has ever seen, called Steinhoff. You guys did the numbers. It's business that did that 150-year-old company called Tonga Tulat that held the economy of KwaZulu-Natal, the second biggest economy in the country, at 16%, Western Cape at 14%, Gauteng is 35% of national GDP. But from the marketing, you'd think Western Cape is bigger than KZN. So what is needed? Of course, it's business that gave us McKinsey and Bain and Company that had to be forced to pay back out of the more than 734 state-owned enterprises and state-owned companies, just one Eskom, R1 billion. So we need a different type of business. The type of business that says, I need to continue to do well by doing good. That business can continue to be an island of prosperity in a sea of poverty. A business that says, when I create jobs, it's not an act of corporate social investment. I'm creating markets of the future. Let's think for a moment, if the CEOs stopped giving us platitudes like gender equality and pay parity, nice English. And they actually delivered social justice. Today, Thursday, on Monday, they go to the HR department and say, print me a spreadsheet to see how much we're paying women versus men for work of equal value. And they put a plan in place, even if it takes them 100 years, but at least a plan. Because even science tells us that when you put a smartphone in the hands of a woman, not only does the education, the health of their own children improve, but of the entire society and the community from which they come. That even COVID-19 showed us that out of 198 countries infected and affected by this COVID-19, 8 of them dealt better with the pandemic than all the others put together, and all 8 of them had women as head of states, like New Zealand with its 5 million people, Germany's Angela Merkel, and all the Scandinavian or Nordic countries when you add one. I genuinely believe that if you had women as leaders of the world, there'll be fewer wars. I'm not saying it. It's the Harvard Business Review of October 2010. On page 27, it says, companies that are led by women are more profitable, they command higher multiples upon exit. They're the best companies to work for. The employees feel needed and wanted. They're free to speak their mind without any fear of retributions or reprisals. About young people, I think not all of you must aspire to be doctors and lawyers. I mean, some of my best lawyers, friends are doctors and lawyers. But Germany, after the Second World War, became the biggest economy in Europe. It still is. And if you look at what they did simple things. They didn't allow you to go to matric. We used to call it matric. You call it grade 12. They'll catch you at standard 8 and say, let's give you vocational training. Artisans, fitters and turners, millwrights, motor mechanics, lift mechanics. That's all they did. And look at the cars that they make. They're not too shabby, né? Not too shabby. So I think that's what we need. Rather than people doing PhDs, we should be talking to the 26 public universities. That has 1.2 million students this year. That would cost 50 billion to educate all of them on a fee-free basis. But unfortunately, collectively, there's this small problem called historical debt. They owe 16.5 billion in 2022, 9.2 billion of which is irrecoverable. Let me take a last question. Kenalenako? Itenako?
Essentially,
Last one.
the man in the pig.
You're the boss, you must tell me.
So you wanted to...
Don't forget the white man.
This is who I am calling.
Yes. Just now he thinks we have something against him. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you so much, Prof. Your words are inspiring. We love your passion for our country. You've pointed out I'm a white man, I've got grey hair. I'm clearly not a lady. So much of what you say and you want to inspire us to talks to our women, talks to our youth. What do you say to me about how I can help? Because I want to. I was lucky, I spent 2003 away in the UK, and I still remember getting off the plane 5th of February 2004, see Table Mountain, and I just know I'm home. This is home, and I want to contribute to home, but I'm old, I'm white, and I'm a man. And I hear your story, and it's youth, and it's women, and it's black, and I want to be part of your story as well, Prof. So help me, please.
Sure. Profound. You see? That's how they took the land. With a sweet tongue. But you're absolutely correct. So collectively, imagine for a moment, instead of paying a gardening service company, you employed one man. and you pay them 3,000 a month. Some of you pay them 5,000 a month. That's 10 times more than 350 rands a month social relief of distress grant. But young, able-bodied men go to a South African post office and queue for the whole day rather than coming to you and doing your garden. 2, imagine for a moment if we're quite intentional in the businesses that we run. I ran 5 multinational companies. And sometimes we'll get edicts from headquarters or mothership and say, no, our chemicals business, we need to cull the numbers by 10%. You need really brave souls who are MDs of South Africa to say, no, in South Africa, we're not going to cull 10% because unemployment is very high. Let's find some creative ways, some imagination, like we did when I was running Shell Oil Products Africa for 8.5 years. We created a BE entity called Tebe Investments. They own 20% of our retail business. It ended up being 28%. Datevuse Kanyile was their chairman. Sizwe Mncwango took over from him, but that allowed them to probably do 8 other investments as a direct result of that. Because we wrote in their shareholders agreement that we guarantee 2 dividends a year every year, irrespective of performance. My boss was Jeroen van der Veer at that time. He called me to the Hagen and said, what are you smoking? This is not commercial. I said, which part of it is not commercial? It's a guarantee, irrespective of performance. I said, how can they affect our performance? They are BE partners. We run the company, we're in control. So if we mess it up, it's just us. But imagine if we have done vendor financing. It was 10 billion at that time. It ring fences 10 billion. You can get 10 billion. Now you've got your 10 billion and interest. Oh, damn it, I didn't think about it that way. I said, but if we write that in an agreement, they can go to any bank and waive this piece of paper. They can get somebody to finance this. And they did. They got a loan from Nedbank within 2 days. What more can we do? You know lots of stuff, skills. Because you have been advantaged. Because if you are South African, up until today, we haven't changed the numbers. We still spend 100 rand on a white kid's education and 45 on a colored kid's education and 10 rand on an African child, 27 rand on an Indian child. So you set them up for generations to follow. So the economic power patterns are already determined. You say, because I know something, if you know 10 things, and say, I'm going to take an African woman to mentor and hand over to, and you are quite intentional, conscientious, deliberate, and purposeful. I'm a black man, but all the companies who have been finally accountable, I've left other black people, most of them women. If I had time, I would tell you that at Business Leadership South Africa, I left a warrior of a woman. That at Shell Oil Products Africa was 8.5 years, I left Ubabuhloni Piso Justice Mtolo. At Otis Elevators as MD in 1996, I left Sacred and Ready. Everywhere. At the moment, my boss is an amazing rock star. I don't have time, but her name is Nompumelelo Tembekile Madisa. She's 45. She's been the MD for 5 years. The Buisness Group Limited, a proudly South African company, 38 years old. Today she employs 130,000 people, 7 divisions. She owns 350 companies, 250 of them are operating entities. Last year, trading profit was 123 billion South African rands, 14 billion trading profits. There before, 114 billion revenues and 11.4 trading profit. But here's the trick. She does it. Oh, she's the first woman to declare the biggest dividend in the history of Bidvest. She does this with a board that is 80% black, 73% African women, because she's quite intentional about it. So I go to business because you are a businessman. Lots of business people. They even have big names like Actuarial Society of South Africa. Imagine if business paid black women-owned SMEs in 30 days. Because to SMEs, cash flow is the difference between life and death. At BLSA, we started measuring those companies that pay in 7 days. And some of them say, 7 days, but I would have lost 30 days of interest if I kept it. It's a big company. And I know, yeah, you lose interest, but you get double in BE points. So sometimes we have to be as practical as that. I mean, how many of us would wake up in the morning and say, for nation building and social cohesion, I'll wake up in the morning and go and buy my red BMW X5 with a white leather interior, but I'll be intentional and buy it from somebody who comes from Soweto. Not the usual suspects. Soweto has 3.5 million people. Soweto. Botswana, Eswatini, Lesotho, and Namibia, on average, has less than 2 million people. So Soweto is bigger than these countries. Up until today, there's not a single OEM-approved body repair shop in Soweto. So it's okay for these blacks to drive the BMWs and Mercedes-Benz, and when they're involved in a prank, they put it on a flatbed to be fixed in Johannesburg. Imagine if they did that in Soweto and created jobs there. Kitsamai, Okhotofet. Kitsamai.
Only if you're done.
Okay, let me take one question.
If you're not done, usatsamai.
You can't say that to blacks. We'll be here until tomorrow.
Solalala.
One
No,
last
it's
question.
fine.
One last question from
One
this
last
side.
question.
Thank you. I think my question was with regards to the theme of the talk, that if this is our land, then where are our stories? I think a bit of background to the question is that in the context where our identity is almost contested, and our narratives are almost always imposed on us, what can we do as us in this room, for starters, to ensure that young people are equipped to articulate their own stories authentically? And when I say authentically, it's because if you, for example, go to Soweto, or for example, go to Orange Farm, where in the past 6 months, this year alone, 3 kids were killed in a shootout within the school. I mean, and then you go to, I don't know, Parktown or wherever. If you take that child from Orange Farm and you put them in Parktown, they will try to adopt to an identity that they do not identify with, you know? And also in that, by saying that we want to equip them to articulate their stories authentically, while also fostering platforms for collective empowerment. By empowerment, I'm talking about that, so that one day, when we are asked this very same question, that if this is our land, then where are our stories? Young people, including myself, can rise and answer this question with great clarity and confidence, regardless of their setup.
Thank you. I told you. See how these blacks cheat? She posits it like it's one question. It's actually 3. You give them a hand and they take the whole arm. So, let me start first with, you know, if you're a country and you make English compulsory but agriculture optional, of course you'll produce citizens that speak English fluently but on an empty stomach. You don't need matric to be a farm worker. You don't. So 5 to midnight, 27th of April 1994, the National Party went to elections, actually believing they were going to win the elections. Because their thesis was, we have banned Nelson Mandela for 27 years. The young people have never seen his face, they've never seen his voice, they can't read his writing. Who's going to vote for him? 2, they say, if we lose it, our second point is that Inkatha Zulu, IFP, then they are friendly to us. Maybe they might win the elections. But no, it can't be the ANC. So 5 to midnight, they realize, not. That's okay, but as business people for many years, things might go wrong. So what do we do now? They own the only government-owned diamond mine called Alexco, which is still loss-making. Because at that time, they decided not. We don't know what the outcomes of the elections are going to be, but just take whatever you can in your pockets, in your rucksacks, just as insurance. Ne? They owned embassies, properties in other countries. They just gave title deeds. Give. So today when we say, no, but sell to black people 20%, sell. They are the first to say, but why should I give 20% of my company? They were given. But 5 to midnight, they are given farms in Stellenbosch. Some of them big farm names on a 99 list. Given. There's and 3, not far from where we are, on your way to Pretoria, there's an overpass. It's called New Road. That piece of land belongs to what is called the Bird family. Their grandfather goes to the Johannesburg Council and he gets a piece of land on 8-year lease. 8-year lease, 80, on Tuesday. He goes to a company that was then called Chevron Texaco, trading as Caltex in this country. Says, I've got this piece of land, what can you do? On Friday, they pay him 5 million rand to build 2 Caltex service stations on either side of this. We call it a double header. Fast forward to today, is the granddaughter of the Bird family who collects 5 million a month just in rental from that piece of land on 88-year lease. So what has our government done for us other than just talk, I want to create black industrialists? I haven't met one black industrialist. When they negotiate with the DA for 2 weeks, we think Inkatha for 1 day and IFP for 1 day and EFF for 1 day. They do it in Westcliff at a white businessman's home. They haven't even created their own Camp David where they can feel comfortable that the state secret will be kept here. It will be confidential. When they run elections, they still run to business people that don't look like them. They've been in power for 30 years. That's what young people must help us to change that story and that narrative. Let me close by saying we love China and we love Russia. Some of our leaders, when they're sick, like the late Didi Mabuza, go to Russia. I wonder why. So, just 2 anecdotes about China. The Chinese are unlike our president who would stand on the State of the Nation address and rattle 39 priorities. Because in business we have learned that if you've got 39 priorities, then nothing is a priority. China has only one problem only. And they call it 1.4 billion people problem. That's all. Nothing else. If you're Africa, you've got minerals, they say, will this help us to solve this 1.4 billion people problem? If not, they're not interested in it. And look at the results. In 10 years, they've taken 800 million people out of poverty. That's 15 times the size of a country called South Africa. One problem. But when you go to a rally in Emondlo, Langanyanga, and Kukuletu, it's so nice for politicians to stand there. You see, we have a triple challenge. We don't have a triple challenge. We have one challenge. It's jobs. That's all it is. Jobs. Because you see, there's stubbornly high levels of unemployment that lead to increasing levels of inequality and increasing levels of poverty. So the root cause is jobs. You give people jobs, you don't have to give them RDP houses. They'll buy their own bloody houses. You give them jobs, you don't have to give them social security. They'll pay for their own train fares and tip at the restaurant. So that's our only problem. One problem. But I said the last anecdote about China is because it produced a guy called Mikhail Gorbachev. He gave us glasnost and perestroika. That allowed the Iron Curtain to come up and the wall to come down. He says, we knew that the party was over when all we could do is to talk about our history. Because you see, when one steadily burns the midnight oil, one gains access to the domain of knowledge and wisdom, the world of meaning, the world that cannot be conquered without a persistent crusade. So if this is your land, where are your stories?
Once again, a massive thank you, Prof. Great discussion, and I think great questions that have come from the audience. Again, you ran off the stage, but we just given you a little gift, something small to say a big thank you for your contribution. Another round of applause for the professor. I'm now going to call up onto the stage Jesse and Sim from AWF to give us an update on the AWF campaign as well as to announce the winner of the competition.
My name is JC Africa, and I'm joined here by my colleague Sim Sonke. Before we get into AWF things, I don't know if any of you have noticed something really cool about me, but I really like bright colors and vibrant colors and all things eccentric, right? So you can imagine the joy that the origami assistant gave me over these past few days, and these brilliantly bright colored birds and things all around the convention. So it is my honor and joy to announce the winner of the origami challenge, which was everybody making beautiful paper art that decorated the tree at the center of the assistant. So I'm going to hand over to Sim to congratulate our winner.
Thanks, Jesse, and thanks to everybody who participated in the origami challenge. So unfortunately, there could only be one winner. So please, let's put our hands together for Nan Chen, who just won herself a Take-A-Lot voucher and a Pure Pop thermal flask. Please put our hands together for Nan Chen. Okay, we're going to that.
Okay, you ready? So Joel Barker once said that vision without action is merely a dream. Action without vision just passes the time, but vision with action can change the world. On behalf of the Actuaries Without Frontiers stand, we really want to thank all of you for your generosity and kindness over the past year and during the convention season, because you've really helped us create our vision of addressing some of the transformation issues which we are seeing in our profession at a grassroots level through your donations. So over the past few days at the convention, we have raised around 245,000 Rand, which would allow us to feed around 612 children for a month. Please give yourselves a round of applause. as our slogan for this year says, you can't teach a hungry child maths. So if you maybe missed out on donating, please scan the QR code right now or take the QR code in your programs with you. We will be extending this challenge to the end of November, and we will also be sending some information through as the news bites, so please look out for that. And now for the part you're all waiting for, we are going to be drawing the lucky person who will be taking home this gorgeous Nutri blender. Please forgive us if we did say a Nutri bullet. We do not want to be sued or anything. It is a Nutri blender, but it works as well as a Nutri bullet, I can assure you. So, are you ready to announce the winner? I am going to be, this is like a childhood dream of mine, I'm going to be one of those box girls, which is amazing. So, let's go. Could we get a nice drum roll? Because I know some of you are tired. Let's go.
Sorry. Okay, and the winner is Haley Clark. I do not see Haley Clark.
Okay, Hailey might have left early, so we will be contacting her for her gorgeous blender. Come back next year when we are going to be coming back for a bigger, better initiative to help create socially conscious actuaries. So your reaction to that makes me excited for next year. So we'll see you at the convention. Please look out for Actuaries Without Frontiers. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Awesome. Thank you, Jesse and Sim. Everyone, this brings us to the end of the 2025 convention. Now, when we started the convention, the anchor point for us was going beyond the numbers. So if I look at the different presentations we've sat in over the last 2 days, it was around taking us as a profession beyond the numbers. Now, when we think of numbers, and as actuaries, numbers are hard-coded into our DNA. But the one thing I want to leave you with is in all of the different environments that we operate, in the different fields, we must go beyond the numbers. If we look at life insurance, we're not in the business of paying claims. It's about protecting families and communities. When I looked at the presentation that was done around climate risk, it's how do we protect the vulnerable communities? I think the team talked about KZN and some of the flood risk and some of the climate change that we've seen. But again, for me, it speaks, how do we go beyond the numbers? In all of the different fields that we sit in here today, we are the guardians and protectors of the livelihoods of the communities in which we operate. Whether you're even in the retirement fund sector, where you look after people's pension provident funds, or in the healthcare sector, let us continue to go above and beyond the numbers and to see beyond that. If I look at some of the insights from the past 2 days, the thing that really stuck out for me in the convention was around how do we move from calculation to contribution as an organization. So I think as we look to the future of this profession, the litmus test for us is not going to be how well we're going to calculate or do the numbers, but how far our contribution will extend into the communities and the different places that we operate in. And from my perspective, I think looking at all of the different discussions we've had, from transformation to even, some of the snakes in spreadsheets, it's really around how we move forward as an organization and we make that difference. If each one of us in the room just contributes to making a difference, whether it's giving up time to anyone in society, and each person pays that forward, I mean, you can do the maths, it will be an exponential difference that is made in the world. So from my side, I just want to say then a big thank you, lots of insights, and let us continue to, as we step into the future years, go beyond the numbers and move towards how do we create contribution and significance. With that, I'm also going to hand over now to Gugu, who's going to give us a couple of insights before closing for today and doing the vote of thanks.
Yeah, I think that's a really great reflection and a wonderful way to end, I think, what's been 2 days of really incredible conversation, insights, and research. And I know you said thank you to everyone for their participation. And I do want to thank the various sponsors and partners that make an event like this possible. An event of this magnitude can only happen through great partnerships. So we'd like to say thank you very much to SA3, to Discovery, to Sapiens, to WTW, to ENX, to RNA Analytics, to Sanlam, to Insights, to Accurate, to MBE Consulting, to Fiscal, to Liberty, to Milliman, to Old Mutual, to RGA, to Swiss Re, to Genry, to Hanover Re, to SAL, to Alexander Forbes, to Data Symphony, the Momentum Group, Munich Re, Standard Bank, Colorfield, Africa Re SA, Communicate Recruitment, Network Finance, and the IACA Consulting Actuaries. Thank you very much for making this event possible. Many hands make light work, and the convention wouldn't be possible without you. And with that, that is a wrap on the 2025 convention. And we will see you in Cape Town in 2026. Thank you.
See you in Cape Town. Thank you, everyone.